Nate and I have been adventuring together since 2015. Everything from backpacking to pack rafting to peak bagging in the western US, with an international trip to Thailand in 2018. In 2021, we planned a trip to Nepal, our biggest one yet. We had planned the trip for the year prior, but COVID kept pushing it back. When we bought flights, there was a mandatory 10-day quarantine upon arrival in Kathmandu, but this was luckily lifted days before our departure. Nepal is home to the Himalayas, the world's youngest and highest mountain range. 8 of the 10 highest mountains in the world are located within its borders. Most are familiar with Mount Everest, the highest on Earth, but there are 7 other giants that have been enticing mountaineers for decades. Our adventure centered on the world's 8th highest mountain, Manaslu. We planned to walk the famous Manaslu Circuit and attempt a 20,000-foot satellite peak of Manaslu named Larke Peak. We flew into Kathmandu and met Tindu, our guide for the trip. We set up shop for a couple days at the Dham Himalaya Hotel, our temporary base amidst the busy city. While here, Tindu helped us rent climbing equipment and obtain permits for the trek and climb. All the while, we soaked up the hospitality and explored the city.
Here we are at the Dham Himalaya Hotel, days before the epic adventure.
Gear preparation begins.
Oh my god. Look at all that gear. Look at all this gear.
It was an amazing city, but we were itching to get into the backcountry. We drove across Nepal to the town of Sodikola, the start of the Manaslu Circuit. From here we began our trek, following the gorge of the Budi Gandaki River to near its glacial headwaters along the Nepal-China border. Our first day's lunch was unforgettable. We asked for some dal bhat, a common lentil dish, with chicken. After deciding on this meal, our host immediately went and grabbed a chicken from the yard, then killed, flash-boiled, plucked, and cooked it right there to complete the lunch dish. It was fresh. Suspension bridges are heavily utilized to link rural communities, providing transportation routes across Nepal's many deep gorges.
Landslide.
Landslides, both historical and new, were common sights along the trek. Also along the trek are located tea houses, the backcountry equivalent to a bed and breakfast, with food usually offered throughout the day. It was at these tea houses that we ate the majority of our meals and slept the majority of our nights along the trek. From Sodikola, we passed through Kolabesi and then Jagat. In Jagat, Nate began to show signs of a stomach bug that would make his life quite difficult along the trail.
This is just normal.
A guide is required when trekking the Manaslu Circuit. Tindu, our guide, kept us wholly entertained, picked out the best lunch spots around, and made sure our permit checkpoints and tea house stays were smooth. Nima, our porter guide, carried team gear for the camping portion of the trek and kept us entertained as well. There are countless side trips along the trek, one of which is exploration of the isolated Sum Valley. At Dang, our 4th night along the trek, the tea house was amazing, though empty. As we were among the first trekkers back after border closures for COVID, we got to experience a different and less busy trekking atmosphere than normal. Unfortunately for Nate, his Dang experience was one of stomach pain rather than awe. In Namrung, we experienced more peace and quiet, had a great dinner, and got a short and warm shower in. The goal after Namrung was to reach Samagoun, the base camp town for those attempting to climb Manaslu Peak, and our scheduled rest day. We were finishing 5 straight days of trekking, trending uphill across Nepali flat terrain, with Nate managing a stomach bug. We got some extra sleep, reorganized our packs, and couldn't help but explore the town.
This is Samagoun. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon. That big one's Manaslu.
We weren't able to see Manaslu's peak until the evening of our layover day. We saw the clouds clearing up and set up a time-lapse shot of the peak breaking through the clouds. There was something powerful about being near this mountain. Nate's face says it all. Around this part in the trek, we began to come in contact with many grazing yaks. At first we were intimidated by their size, but they rarely did much of anything when we walked nearby, so we got quite used to them.
Outside of Samagoun, there's some yaks. Samdo, our place of rest tonight. And we're gonna let some horses pass us.
From Samagoun, we trekked to Samdo, where we did our first of 2 acclimatization hikes to prepare our bodies for the higher elevations to come. It was here that we stumbled across some $5 yak wool gloves that saved some fingers later in the trip.
Down there is Samdo. We're at 13,600. There's a glacier and another big mountain. Don't know the name of it.
From Samdo, we headed to Dharamsala, our last tea house stay prior to beginning the climbing portion of the trip. Here we did our second acclimatization hike, reaching the highest elevation either of us had ever been. The excitement was building and the views everywhere were awe-inspiring. It was here where I first started to experience some altitude sickness, which put me in my place very quickly.
Yak Rock.
Yeah. Sage we're at 15.7 and change, the highest we both have ever been in our lives. So you can tell.
Yeah. Mostly coherent.
Mostly. My ankle hurts, I don't know what I did. It's probably Nathan's fault.
He switched his boots when he wasn't looking. He
Yes.
got the left one on the right. He's gonna check it in a minute, watch.
Larke Peak. That's what we're climbing.
From Dharamsala, we headed up towards Larke Pass to the base of Larke Peak. The terrain was starkly beautiful. We didn't get much sleep at base camp due to the elevation and my own GI problems. I had developed my own stomach bug in Dharamsala, and Nate suffered the consequences in our shared tent. Follow the black dot. Our plan was to reach a high camp from base camp the next day and rest in the tents until early morning when we would begin our attempt on the peak. We needed to start by 2 a.m. to provide enough time to reach the goal and minimize potential hazards of snow travel.
पहिला चुमबेली गरे चुमबेलीबाट मनसलुबाट फेरि यता अन्नपूर्ण राउन्डबाट फेरि के पहिला नार्फु गरे नार्फुबाट फेरि सिधै काङ्गा पास गरेर तल झरे 4 ट्रिप.
It took us nearly 7 hours to go the 1.5 miles up to high camp. I recorded the day as to high camp, hardest day of my life. There was no melodrama in that description. It was hard. We progressed from boulder scrambling to fixed line ascent with a Jumar to crampon protected alpine travel to reach our high camp at 18,200 feet, where we rested quite restlessly until early the next morning. We started getting ready around 1 a.m. for the climb, but Nate's body told him no bueno, so he sat tight. Myself and Nawa, our climbing guide, headed up the snow slope, tied together with a length of rope with ice axes and crampons. We reached the top of the slope, stopped by an overhung cornice. We tried to traverse around the cornice to the right, but that was sketchy and steep. We tested the snow of the cornice to see if we could climb up and through it, but that wasn't going to work either. Unfortunately, we were stopped in our tracks. After the attempt on Larke Peak, we broke high camp, down climbed to base camp, packed up base camp, and made our way over Larke Pass and down to Fedi for the night. This was a long day on no sleep and at elevation, but we were inspired to continue to simply reach more dense air lower down. Arthritis was flaring in us both, and I believe hobbling more correctly describes our movements that day than hiking.
We're in Fedi. We had an absurd day yesterday. Up at 1 a.m. to climb at 2 a.m. Nate had hypothermia. We didn't make the climb because there was poor snow conditions, but we tried a couple routes up. I fell down climbing on some thin snow. There's Tindu. He's been babysitting us for the last couple days.
We slept the sleep of the dead in Fedi, and it took a while to get moving the next morning. Everything was aching, and we had zero energy. But everything surrounding us was so beautiful and surreal, and the trek remained so engaging, that we pressed on with smiles.
There's a goat jam.
In Circuit, we celebrated our climb with our guides. The Roxy and beer flowed, and many chickens were sacrificed to sate our returning appetites.
Way over here. There's Nate. There's the kitchen we spent a lot of time in.
We laid over for one night due to heavy rain and hearty hangovers, but we eventually had to get moving the following day to keep with our schedule.
Well, we wanted to take the river today, but as you can see, it's a little higher than normal.
Just a bit.
We are both avid boaters, so whitewater pipe dreams were abundant along the trek. We walked all day through heavy rain, physically stopped from crossing a suspension bridge in Tilche because of a religious ceremony. After we were eventually allowed to pass, we were rerouted due to a fresh landslide along the familiar path between villages.
There's Nathan Parnell. We're walking a optional jungle trail because a giant landslide took out the main trail above Darapani. There's Nate mountain goating it through a landslide raging like 2-day I don't know what you call it, 2 days straight of thunderstorm. Mid-October. Landslides galore. It's the Marsa-Gyandi River. Pronounced it close enough. Part of today's long detour to get nowhere. Where are we going? Nowhere.
But we're halfway there.
Halfway to nowhere.
Look at those chapped lips. They'll never be the same.
We were happy to finally reach Darapani, where we got some sleep and let our clothes pretend to dry out.
Look at that giant hole. Can you boat it? Landslides. Go. We made it to the Jeep in Cold Trek-ish. Just after.
To forgo walking along paved roads with vehicle traffic, we took a bumpy Jeep ride to Bessie Sahar.
There's a landslide over there.
We were held up one last time for a landslide that blocked the road. A group of locals got busy moving rocks and clearing the road to keep traffic moving, and we were driving past the site in no time. At last, we reached Bessie Sahar, the end of our trek.